And welcome to Burnsville Park and National Resource Commission meeting for May 6, 2013. The first item for business is to approve our agenda from our last meeting. Commissioners, is there any item to add to the agenda? Hearing none. Staff?
Move for approval.
Nothing from staff,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Yep.
Yeah. So nothing from the staff? Thank you. So we'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll try it. Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the motion moves. Thank you. The next item is the citizen comments. Is there anyone in the audience? Seeing none, we will move to the next item, which is approval of minutes. Commissioners, any revision to the minutes for the last meeting that we had?
Not for me.
Staff?
No changes from staff.
Good. We'll
Move
pass
to
them.
approval.
Thank you. It's a pretty fast one today.
I'll say.
Second? Good. All in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Motion approved. The fourth one is for our reviewing the project to remove invasive plant species and restore native vegetation in Terrace Oak Park in partnership with Green River Greening. Terry, do you know who's going to be presenting?
Mr. Chairman, we have Caleb Ashling here this evening. He's our natural resources technician, and he'll be sharing some information about the project with you this evening.
Thank you, Caleb. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for having me. Terry mentioned, my name is Caleb Ashling. I'm a natural resource technician for the city of Burnsville. And I'm here today to talk to you about an Oak Savanna and Oak Woodland restoration project that we've been putting together for Terrace Oaks Park. And this is a grant project proposal. We haven't yet applied. And just outline of what I'm going to be talking about tonight. First, I'll just do a general grant overview, and then we'll talk about some changes in the habitat at Terrace Oaks Park that have been occurring over many years. And then I'll go over some specific components of the grant project. Okay, so most of you are probably familiar with Terrace Oaks Park, but it's one of the biggest parks in the Burnsville Park system. It's 240 acres, and it's a multi-use park. So we have hikers, mountain bikers, cross-country skiers, and other activities going on there. And it's circled in red on this map here. And here's a map that's will show you where our proposed grant project will occur. So it's in the yellow hash mark in the northwest corner of the park there. That's a 21-acre area. You can all see that. I'll put the cursor over it here. And then just so you know, the orange lines are the hiking and cross-country ski trails. The red dotted line is the mountain bike trail, and the green line is the park boundary. And then I have the County Road 11 park parking lot marked there, so you can orientate yourself if you're somewhat familiar with the park. So the general grant project details, the proposed grant project, are this would be a application to the Outdoor Heritage Fund, which is state funding. Our approximate grant request would be $140,000, and the city's match for that would be $12,000. As I mentioned, the project size would be 21 acres, and then we'd be working with a grant partner on this. Our grant partner would be Great River Greening, which is a nonprofit organization that helps cities and other organizations implement habitat management projects, and they have a long proven track record of doing this type of work. And then the project timeline, well, first we'd be submitting our application with Great River Greening. I believe it's in June of this year, June or July. And then we'll be hearing back from the grant on whether we're awarded in December of this year. And then if we are awarded funds, we'd start the project in July of 2014, and it would continue until June of 2016. As I mentioned, I wanted to discuss a little bit some of the habitat changes that have occurred at Terrace Oaks Park over time. And so this is going a ways back. This is a map that shows the Twin Cities pre-settlement habitat types. And this is based on survey data from the 1800s. And I've approximately marked Burnsville in the red box there. And as you can see, that Burnsville is primarily oak savanna and woodland. That would be primarily oak woodland at that time, with a little bit of prairie and wet meadow. And woodland and oak savanna, the primary habitats in this area, are also what we believe were the primary habitats at Terrace Oaks Park. And then I'd like to show a series of aerial photos of the park. This one is from 1937. Again, this is similar to the one we saw before. The green boundary shows the park boundary, and now the red dotted line shows this proposed project area. And then what we're looking at here in these photos is going to be the tree cover in this area. So if you look closely, you can see individual trees in this area, how spread out they are, how dense they are. So if you look at this photo here from 1937, you can see that it's a fairly open woodland, especially in the northern half. We have almost oak savanna conditions there, and then open woodland in the southern half. And moving to 1964, we have a similar photo showing scattered trees in the northern half of the park, and then a little bit denser but still fairly open conditions in the southern half of the park. Now looking at an aerial photo from 1991, you can see that there's been intensive growth of tree and increase in the canopy cover in this area. So most of the park is now fairly densely wooded, and with that northwest corner being a little bit open, but still a lot of trees coming in. And then lastly, this is 2011. You can see that almost complete canopy cover in the park. There's very few open areas remaining. Just a cropped image of some of those same photos, the one from 1937 and the one from 2011 of our proposed project area. And you can see that we've moved from a scattered, more oak savanna-like habitat to a more overgrown woodlot. So what happened to make these changes occur at the park? Well, probably the major thing that occurred was wildfires were suppressed in this area, and this has been going on for many years. Wildfires historically would have been a component of maintaining oak savanna and oak woodland. Oaks have very thick bark, which makes them resistant to periodic fires that come through the area, and other species of trees are less resistant to that. So it helps push the balance in favor of the oaks, and so fire is really important for creating that oak savanna habitat. So after wildfires were suppressed, we had the encroachment of fast-growing weedy tree species. Box elder would be one in particular that took over many of the canopy openings at Terrace Oaks Park. And then also very important was the invasion of common buckthorn. You've probably heard about common buckthorn before here from other speakers, but common buckthorn is an invasive shrub that takes over the understory of woodland areas, and it outcompetes the native ground cover plants, and it prevents tree regeneration. And this photo here shows a densely wooded buckthorn understory here, choking out any tree regeneration or native plants. So the goals of our proposed grant is that we'd like to increase the native plant diversity in this area. We know that more diverse habitats are more productive for wildlife, and they're also more adaptable to changes in the conditions. And then we'd like to increase the health of the existing trees in this area, and particularly the oaks in this area. Many of these trees need more space to grow. They're very crowded. So if we're able to give them more space, they'll be able to grow to their full potential. And also included that would be we'd like to see some regeneration of oaks in this area. We'd like to see some young seedlings coming back that will replace the trees that we have. And it's extremely important for oaks to have an open understory. What these young oak seedlings need is light, and that's what we need to bring back to the understory. We'd also like to increase the awareness of the resource. So we'd be, one component of our project would be bringing in volunteers to help with the grant project. And Great River Greening does a great job of getting the word out about the program and bringing volunteers in. So to be able to educate volunteers as they came in for the project, and also as an active park, people would be going through the area and seeing what we were doing, and we'd have additional opportunities for education there. And then we'd like to implement a sustainable long-term management plan. So the grant would go for several years, but once the grant was complete, we will have a plan in place that will allow us to manage this area long-term with our existing funding. So this brings me to some of the specific components that this proposed grant would include. The first would be some tree thinning. That'd be especially for box elder, as I mentioned, and some other less desirable tree species. We wouldn't be removing oaks or anything like that, and we'd be marking the trees ahead of time with our city forester and partners with Great River Greening. And then we'll also be doing invasive species control. That would be especially buckthorn removal, but we'd also be taking out other noxious weeds like Canada thistle that can complicate long-term management. And then we'll be bringing prescribed burns to this area. We've already done some prescribed burning in the prairie area that's just north of County Road 11. This is a small section. But we'll be doing more prescribed burning in the woodlot if we were to receive this grant. And this would be helping, as I mentioned, bringing that important component of oak savanna. And then we'll be doing some native plant seed and plug planting. This is to reach our goal of increasing plant diversity. We do have some existing native plants in pockets at the park in this area, but we'd like to increase those so we can have a very diverse and widespread native plant community. Just wanted to take a look at some potential park impacts of this project. We don't anticipate any major disruption to normal park activities, but there could be some minor trail disruption, specifically in the area that was marked for our proposed grant project, that 21 acres in the northwest corner. And this is just a recreation map that shows this is the winter trail map for the park. And that trail disruption would most likely be 1 or 2 trail crossings for equipment to move woody material out of the site. So we have to have a way of getting some of that woody material out. So we create some small, maybe 8 to 10 foot wide trail crossings. And this was also done, a similar method was used at Alamagna Park when we removed buckthorn from an area there, and there weren't any major complications with skiers with those trail crossings. We also expect some chainsaw and other equipment noise to be occurring, not for the entire duration of the project, but for the several months in which we would be doing buckthorn removal and some tree thinning. But this is a large park, so there's plenty of space for people to go where they wouldn't be disturbed by the noise. And then temporary disruption of habitat for wildlife. So of course, if we're going to be in there with different equipment, we'd expect some temporary disruption for the wildlife that's currently there. But in the long term, we're looking to get better wildlife habitat there. So I think it's a problem that we'd only be looking at for the short duration of the project, and in the long term, we'll have better habitat there. And lastly, I wanted to end with some of the benefits to the community of this project. The first one would be increased wildlife viewing opportunities, both because we're providing better habitat, but also because we're creating a more open savanna or woodland community. As you can see in this picture here, this is oak savanna at Kelleher Park. You can see a lot easier through the forest in this picture than you could in the picture where you had buckthorn completely encroaching the understory. We also will have educational opportunities with this project, both through the volunteer project components and then also through just having an oak savanna right in the middle of the city where many people have access to go visit it. School groups could visit it. We also do some nature tours with the city, so we could do nature tours at the site. Oak savanna is one of the rarest habitats in the state, so it would be a unique opportunity for people to see it at Terrace Oaks. And then I also believe this would lead to enhancement of the overall park experience. So I've heard from numerous park users of Terrace Oaks that have been using the park for many, many years and have witnessed some of the changes that I outlined through the aerial photos, that they feel that the encroachment of many of these woody tree species and buckthorn has a negative impact on the park. And particularly as you're walking through the park, there's a lot less light. It's very closed in and dark as you're going through the park. You see a lot less wildflowers, a lot less wildlife, and generally just changes the experience. So we'll be able to improve the overall experience by recreating that oak savanna and oak woodland habitat. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions, and I think after that, request that the commission
Go ahead, Don.
recommend this for continued.
I have two questions.
Yes.
One is on what is the intent with the woody biomass when you're completed with it? And then the second is kind of a cost breakdown of, I'm assuming that the majority of the cost, it seems high in relationship to the amount of acres, but I'm assuming the cost of the reseeding probably is higher, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, some of the large cost component of this project would be the actual woody material removal. That's an expensive process to get in there with equipment and haul that out. And then, as you mentioned, the reseeding is also expensive. Native plant seeds aren't especially cheap because they're not widely available. So that's a major component of the cost as well. And then as far as what we'd be doing with the woody material, that has not been determined yet. We'd certainly look at biomass as a potential site for that material, but we'd be working with our partners to make that final determination.
There could be some cost recovery from the sale of woody biomass.
Yes.
Then, please.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. I'm assuming that dealing with less than 10% of the area of the park, I raise the question of there must be a comprehensive plan somewhere for the rest of the park to deal with it. I'm more familiar with some of the trails, and of course buckthorn is the devil for that. So that's one question about the comprehensive long-term plan for Terrace Oaks Park. The second is the long-term maintenance for the area that we're talking about. I think the experience over at Kramer, cutting down all the buckthorn, which has to be done, every few years to maintain it. So is there, and how is the long-term plan for maintenance going to be done, and what is the cost that we can expect over time, so the maintenance of this area may take away from the ability to improve and maintain the rest of the park. And the third question is, I've never heard of the Green River folks, and who are they, what do they do, and why are we partnering from them, and are they putting in money into this plan?
I'll start with the last one there. Great River Greening is a nonprofit organization. They've been around for a long time, and they work with cities and other organizations to help them manage grant projects like this. They worked on a prairie restoration at Pilot Knob in Egan, which is one nearby project that you can take a look at. But they do not contribute funds to this project. They're there to assist us. They give us a lot of expertise, and they also have a field crew that can help us get out and get some of the projects done.
So that's all volunteer?
They have their own, they have paid staff, and then they also use volunteers as well.
But that isn't part of what we're talking about. Does part of this grant go to pay for the Green River folks?
Yes, there is a component of the grant that helps them fund their organization.
How much of it?
I believe it's $12,000. And then, so your other question about the master plan for Terrace Oaks Park. There is a natural resources master plan for this area. I believe it was created in 2007. And it highlights several different sections of the park as priority areas. This would be one section of the park that's a priority area for buckthorn removal and restoration. And in the plan, it outlines working on these priority areas and then trying to connect those priority areas over time. Sorry, you had one other question in there. I can't quite remember what that was. But
Could we get to see what that comprehensive plan is? I don't remember seeing it
Commissioner Nachman, it's our natural resources master plan that was reviewed by this commission and approved by this commission. It's been some time. It is available on our website, and you could pull up that information. And
when was that done?
2007.
2007.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other question was the long-term maintenance and the cost for maintaining that piece of the park.
One of the benefits of going after grant opportunities like this is it is expensive up front, but the long-term maintenance is a lot easier, especially when you have a large amount of money up front to attack it aggressively, the buckthorn aggressively right away. That long-term maintenance cost goes down a lot. And part of that long-term maintenance would be doing periodic prescribed burning to knock back buckthorn, and possibly doing some chemical control on buckthorn as well. And as far as exact costs, it would be hard to say how that would play out until we completed the project, but we'd expect prescribed burn for that area to run around maybe $3,000 or $4,000, and that would be occurring every 3 years long term. And then we also, I think the last component of your question was looking long term at whether this would take resources away. And we have looked at the budget, and we feel that we do have the money available to add this restoration to existing restorations, and we can still maintain everything that we currently have.
Just out of curiosity, back to the master plan, was this area the prime area in that master plan to start there?
Yeah, it identifies this as a priority to start in certain areas and then hopefully work out from those key areas. This Oak Savannah is an area that we had the STOP group, Stewards to Our Parks, start the work there, and so it was one of the top priorities for that park. And we are really expanding. I think Caleb, correct me if I'm wrong, the initial area where STOP started their work and expanding it out to cover 21 acres.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I may have a few questions here. First of all, I just want to make sure I understand the area that was mapped out there. That's that northwest corner that goes Burnsville Parkway and County Road 11,
Yep.
which is the higher elevation and then fans out
Yes.
east and south and east. It just fans out. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, this area here we have.
Right. So that's the higher elevation, and you probably burned on the County Road 11 side, or there has been burns there, be natural or
Yeah, in this area.
man-made. Yes. Okay. Okay. My question is, first of all, you commented about removing the woody materials and stuff. Well, that includes all the down trees that are in there at the present time?
It would include quite a few of them. We would probably leave a few for wildlife, because wildlife does use some down trees, but it would include quite a few of those down trees.
Just to comment on that, my personal thing on that, wildlife that doesn't seem to live in the park. They live in the neighborhood. Seriously. And because of I think the number of down trees just don't provide food for the deer that are in that area. Okay, other than turkey. So that's just a comment. On the north, following the Burnsville Parkway, there's a series of pine trees up that way too. There's some pines up there that I don't know if were planted by the city or not, and how would those be affected by any type of burn?
When we do burns, one, we would not be removing any pine trees as a part of this project, and when they do controlled burns, they'll create burn breaks around that, which means they'll stop the fire before it reaches those pine areas.
Okay. Has anybody indicated at all about not only trees that are standing, that it may be diseased trees that are going to be taken down?
We would definitely, as we're going through and marking trees, we would look for diseased trees and remove those along with the rest of them.
My last thing is, it's been a note I've made to Terry about some other parks that I've seen, and I just wondered about when you replenish some of the natural items, natural grasses and stuff, if you will put anything in there that could attract butterflies.
Yes, there would certainly be some wildflowers in there that would attract butterflies, and when we work on creating these seed mixes, there would probably be 30 to 40 different wildflower species, some of which would definitely be attractive to butterflies and other insects as well.
And this may be directed to Terry. Terry, on the hill that's going down, where they put the guard there to stop from sledding. Is that ever going to get changed to look more natural with this investment, so that we don't have like a gate going halfway going across that hill? And I know all the reasons, but I mean, if we're going to invest in this, I would like to see something that would fit the terrain there than that.
Commissioner Dedze, I agree with your, I mean, the fence was there to kind of get the path to go away. Folks were actually biking up those sections. And we've gotten some grasses, native grasses, to establish on that hillside now. And I think it's about time that we took that fence down, and that's actually on our work plan this summer. Our hopes are that people will respect that we got the native grasses growing there again, and hopefully they won't recreate that trail going up that hillside. But that was a combination of, I would say, more biking in the summertime and hiking than it was. There was some sliding in the wintertime also. But so we do have the plants there that I think, for the most part, that we want to be there, and I think it's time to take the fence down. Okay. Hopefully we don't need the barrier anymore.
As a follow-up question to that last question, is that there used to be a trail really going up to that highest peak, and actually before the tree growth started in there, you could actually have a really nice view of downtown Minneapolis. Once that's, I mean, will that be preserved to come back to that? Because that is was a nice walk at one time up to the top of that hill as a benefit of the park. Very picturesque up there, and I just wondered how if that's going to return to what it was, 2 decades ago, where the trees now totally interfere with it.
Mr. Dedze, Caleb probably isn't aware of some of this background work from discussions about the plan, but in the park system master plans, if you were to look back through them, it talks about an overlook being created. It's been used by the neighborhood, I think, as an overlook for many years, and that was one of the trails that went up there. The problem is that area to go straight up a hill like that is too steep, and it causes a lot of erosion. So if we were to put a trail up to there, and that is part of the vision, it would come off of Burnsville Parkway on the north side and then angle up at a little more gradual slope.
And that was the trail I was referring to, really.
Correct. Yeah. And so kind of where those pines are that you referenced, you'd kind of start there and then head up to the top of the hillside, perhaps create a small picnic area or something up there.
Because it is one of the best views of the cities.
Beautiful view of the Minneapolis skyline. Yep.
So I was just wondering if that would be included into our discussions tonight. And that was my final question.
Would not be part of this project, just so we're clear, but and again, we'll be talking about the Park System Master Plan and setting priorities for those sorts of projects, and you'll have an opportunity to look at where that fits into the rest of the priorities. But
well, and only comment, once the trees are the dead trees and a lot of other stuff is removed, the visibility of anybody driving by can see if anybody's really up there. So if there was anybody misusing the facility, it's pretty evident, really, that who's up there, okay? So unfortunately now that's not the case. It's pretty hidden.
Yeah, so, after this work is done, would be a great opportunity, I think, to go ahead and put that trail section in and create that overlook up there.
That's good. John, you had
I have no questions, no.
anybody else? So today, do we need to make a motion, or what was our plan?
Commissioners, if you're comfortable, we'd ask that you'd consider a motion just recommending that the city move forward with the grant application. It's always a dilemma for us is how much you involve other groups and the neighborhoods when you don't actually have the money yet. We may or may not be successful with our application. We think we will be, but obviously if we are successful, then we'd do a lot more contacting of the neighborhoods, let them know the project's coming up. But at least at a staff level, we feel like this supports the natural resources master plan and specifically the plans for this park.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So who approached who? Did the Green River approach the city, or was it the other way around on getting the projects to apply for the grant?
Yeah, we approached Great River Greening. I have volunteered on some of their other projects before, so I have some experience with the way they work, and I've had a positive experience with them, so I approached them to see if they would be willing to assist us on this project.
So, just to be clear, so what we are going to vote for is just to go with the grant application,
Correct.
correct? We just want to be clear on record. Okay?
Commissioners, I would just say, hopefully you're supportive of the work that we're
Correct,
proposing.
correct.
Okay. Because
But-
if you have concerns,
No,
you
no,
should
no.
know that before we submit the application.
Yeah. So we just want to be for the record, so that's the first step.
Correct.
And then because it's going to be involving the citizens after that, because of noise and everything else and the changes, will be our next step. That once we know that we are successful with the grant, then we will start involving the community.
Correct. And, if it's your desire for us to bring it back before this group again after we, for public comment, we could certainly enfold that into your motion. Again, our intent is to take this to the Trail Committee next month, make them aware of it, and then we will involve the neighborhood. Mr. Ashling, we usually send out notices to everybody around a project like this and let them know what's going to be happening. We put signs up in the park. And so
So
that'd kind of be the standard process.
you'll
If you'd
just
like
follow
to-
the protocol after that.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, so Terry, that would be, once the grant was secured, you'd contact the residents then, or?
Correct. Chairman Stuber, the one exception, I believe we're going to take this to the Trail Committee next, at their June meeting. They have a meeting coming up in the spring. It's kind of our first opportunity to share it with them. So we'll be bringing it to them because they do a lot of planning and in terms of the trail system in the parks.
So do we have a motion to go forward with the grant application?
So moved.
Second?
A second?
Everybody in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. So next we'll move to the item number 5, which is miscellaneous. Commissioner, anything that you want to add in miscellaneous, or you have? No? Staff?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I would just share that our next meeting is scheduled for June 3rd at 6:30 p.m.
Sounds good. That brings us to the end of our formal meeting for this agenda. Commissioner, would you like to please make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That ends up for the meeting. So good evening, and thank you for watching the Burnsville Park and National Resource Commission.